Hi everyone, my name is Peter Galiwango. Welcome to this section of YouTube tutorial. In this section, we are going to be looking at biology, general biology 1. And these are our objectives for today. The first objective will be defining what is meant by biology, the characteristics of living things, evolution and natural selection. And then lastly, but if time permits, we shall look at taxonomy. So to begin with our first objective, the definition of biology, we know that the word bio means life, and the word logy stands for study. So basically, biology is the study of life, study of living things, human beings, plants, ants, everything, fish. So biology is very broad. And in this section of Bio 1, basically we look at the biology of a human being, of mammals. So we shall stick more on the human side than the plant or other creatures. So therefore, let's jump into the second objective, that is characteristics of living things. So human beings are living things, fish are living things, trees, name it. And all the living things have characteristics that are all similar. So to know the characteristics of living things, I use an acronym of the word hero, whereby A stands for adaptation. All living things adapt to their environment. Like for example, people are living in northeastern US adapt to the cold weather when it comes to winter. So people grow a lot of fur on their body to insulate their bodies from heat loss. People who live in higher mountains have, they call it acclimatization. So they have their red blood cells have a higher affinity for oxygen. So since at the top of mountains there's little oxygen, so their red blood cells maximize that little oxygen that they do have. And also we see this in plants. Plants also adapt. For example, plants that live under very tall trees. So you know, tall trees might block sunlight from reaching the small plants. So what they do, these plants use they use a chlorophyll which is a bit darker, like dark green compared to these tall ones. So they this dark chlorophyll has a high affinity for sunlight. Any little sunlight that falls through the leaf is maximally utilized. And also we see that plants that are on a low level tend to bend towards the source of light. All those are examples of adaptation. So our second characteristics of living things is H for homeostasis. Homeostasis is just a state of balancing the both external and internal environment. Animals usually to use human beings, we breathe in and out. We breathe out the carbon dioxide so that it does not intoxify our blood, since carbon dioxide can cause very many conditions like lactic acidosis, whereby you get muscle pulls and other metabolic complications. So we make sure that our bodies make sure that they adjust accordingly. If it's too hot, somebody takes off a coat. If it's too cold, you put on a coat. All those are examples of homeostasis. And this is also seen in very many other living things. Then our third characteristics of living things is E, standing for energy. All living things acquire energy. They need energy to stay alive. Plants get their source of energy from the light, so that they manufacture food, which we animals eat and get energy to support our body cells. And the next one is R, R stands for reproduction. This is self-explanatory. All living things reproduce generations after generations. And the last one is organization. All living things are organized. With this last objective, it's a bit broad, so you will bear with me. I'll need to clear up this and we'll look at it a bit further because it is a bit complex. So when we say living things are organized, we mean that everything begins from an atom if you refer to your chemistry. So an atom is the smallest unit of an element. So when a group of atoms combine, they will form a molecule. So a molecule, like for example, a molecule of water. So when molecules combine, they will form a cell. So this is where biology comes in. A cell is the basic unit of life. So when cells of the same function combine, they form tissue. So when tissues of the same function combine, they will form an organ. Like for example, a heart. Then when organs work with each other, they form a system. So they form a system like the central nervous system. When you look at the cardiovascular system, all these are from organs working with each other. The heart working together with the veins, the brain working together with the spinal cord and the nerves. They make a system. Then from the system, we make an organism. So an organism, like a human being. So when you have a group of organisms, we call them, they form a population. So you can say a population of rats, a population of human beings, a population of bears, name it. So when this population of bears, a population of human beings, a population of rats live together in an environment, we say it's a community. So when this community is out there in the jungle, like for example, the community of, let me say, pigeons in New York City, with the people living in New York City, plus all the animals in New York City, they'll form a community. But this, if it's in a town, then we shall say the community advances from that to from a population community, then it becomes this becomes an ecosystem. So an ecosystem, take it to be all the animals in the jungle living together, the lions living together with the zebras and the antelopes, name it. So that forms an ecosystem. We also have an ecosystem in the oceans, the fish, the crabs, the octopus, and all the sea creatures form an ecosystem. So now, when you have more than one ecosystem, you have the sea, you have the land, you have the Antarctica, all those form what we call the biosphere. So the biosphere is the largest form of organization of living animals. Then when you go down, an atom is the smallest form of organization of living animals. So from that, let us look at let us look at natural selection. Natural selection. So, natural selection is the process by which living organisms descend from their ancestors, and this process can be caused by both change in biological and physical environment. So, the change in biological or physical environment, and usually natural selections leads to formation of new species or new creatures, new organisms. Like for example, how can a change in physical environment lead to a new organism? There's this story about the giraffe. They say that long ago the giraffes didn't have those long necks, so they used to feed on the low ground. But since so many animals were grazing on the on the grass, time came and all the grass was depleted, and these animals had to look for other sources of food. So the animals that could not stretch their neck to eat leaves from higher trees didn't survive, and they did die. So these animals that try to stretch their neck to reach the higher trees and plants were able to succeed and carry on that adaptation, and in a way it naturally selected them to be fit for to continue with life than these long-necked giraffes. So that's how the giraffes, that's the reason why they say they have the long necks. So that's how a change in the physical environment can lead to formation of new organisms. Then for how the biological, how change in biological environment can lead to natural selection is very common. Like for example, if I may say, mutations are very common. Like nowadays, we have so many cancers and the other stuff, and also we have so many resistance to antibiotics by very many bacteria. So these bacteria, for example, can mutate to form new strains that are resistant to these drugs. And we have one good example. Usually it's called MRSA. So this type of staph aureus is a very common hospital infection, hospital disease, because it is very resistant to very many antibiotics. And of recent, they changed it to multi-resistant staph aureus. So this is like an example of how bacteria that didn't have pathogenic properties and now do have pathogenic properties due to mutation and adaptation, leading to natural selection and formation of new organisms. So that's it for natural selection and evolution. And then lastly, if we may talk a bit about the taxonomy. So the taxonomy is the italicized bionomical nomenclature of living organisms. So all living organisms are divided in two classes, or say from domains to species. So if you do have a problem with this, I have an acronym for this that goes that did King Peter cough on Fred and he got sick? So D is for domain, and K is for kingdom, P is for phylum, C is for class, and O is for order, F is for family, G is for genus, and lastly S is for species. So from up to down, when you're on a domain, you're non-specific. So if they say an organism belongs to eukarya, so the domains are three. We have the bacteria, the eukarya, and also the archaea. So the domain is a bit broad. So as you go down to kingdom, we have so many kingdoms: the plant kingdom, animal kingdom. Then you go down, like for a human being, if someone describes for you a human being in a class of eukarya, or an organism in a domain of eukarya, this is broad. The domain is so broad. So as you go down, you become more and more specific. So the species and the genus and the species are the ones that we use to specifically identify or give a name to an organism, so that we know exactly what we are talking about. Like for example, a human being, the genus is Homo, then the species is Sapiens. Then for corn, the genus is Zea, and then the species is maize. So you usually you write Z maize in italicized, and this the right H, sapiens, or italicized. So this is taxonomy. Is a way of classification of living organisms from the domain to the last more specific classification in form of a species. So thank you very much for today. In the next chapter, we shall be discussing more about the nature of science, that is the science process. Tune in. Bye-bye.